What's up, everybody? Jeff Cooper here. Welcome back to Blue Collar Heathen on YouTube. Today, I have been up all night. I was working on the ambulance. I came home, showered, sat down, did this video. I haven't slept since I don't know when. I'm just sitting here with my cup of coffee. We're going to watch something. I have no idea what's going to fall out of my face hole. Let's just get this done. The video we're going to be responding to today is by Dr. Zakir Naik, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, it's from insomnia, ignorance, and is certainly not meant as insult. Dr. Naik has an MBBS, which is equivalent to a physician degree, as like a medical doctor or a DO here in the United States. It's just the naming convention from the college that he went to in his native India. So he is, unlike some Christian apologists I could name, an actual doctor, and is thus deserving of the title and the honorific. I didn't know who he was when I first started watching this video. I did a little bit of research on him while checking some of the facts. He's an interesting figure indeed. He is a Islamic apologist and evangelist. He's a native of India, and that's where he went to school and earned his doctor. That's where he went to college. He evangelizes for Islam in English on his own TV channel called Peace TV, which is broadcast via satellite from Dubai. He records his speeches mostly in English, and sometimes they're translated into other countries. Dr. Naik has received numerous awards for his dedication to Islam and his promotion of the religion. He's also been barred entrance to the UK and Canada, but not here in the United States. His TV station is banned in his native India, where he is considered a fugitive of justice. He was, in a sense, a man without country for a period until he was granted citizenship by Saudi Arabia with direct intervention by King Hussein of the House of Saud. At least two rival religious groups, one Islam and one Hindu, have placed a bounty on his head. Islam is a newcomer to the field of apologetics, and their lack of experience in this field often shows. But this is just an observation on my part. I don't have any facts to back this up, but it seems to make sense, because when you really think about it, consider it's not something they've really had to deal with all that much, as, well, in many Islamic countries, there's simply no need for apologetics, because to question, speak out against, leave, or deny the religion is met with the most serious of legal consequences, thereby rendering apologetics sort of superfluous. Video's likely going to be long, so I don't want to waste too much time on introduction, so let's just get to it.
All the other human beings, most of them, they are blindly following their parents. The Christian, he is a Christian because father is a Christian. The person is a Hindu because father is a Hindu. Most of the Muslims are Muslims because their father is a Muslim. This atheist is thinking his father, his parents may be religious, but he does not believe in the gods which his parents worship.
Okay. Well, I mean, he starts strong there. He seems to recognize that religion runs in families, and I would suppose that your religion does as well. And he did make the important distinction that the atheist just does not believe. So I think that's interesting, and it's actually rather heartening to hear, being as sometimes that position has to be defended against other atheists. So let's continue on here and see what else comes up.
Most of the atheists, we realize, have become atheists because they believe in science and technology. These people think that science is advanced so much, we don't require any scripture, we don't require any religion, etc. The first question I asked to the atheist is that suppose there is an equipment there is a machinery which no one in the world has ever seen before. If it's brought in front of you, if it's brought in front of the atheist, and if we ask the question to him, that who will be the first person who will be able to tell you the mechanism of this machinery or this object, what can be his reply?
Okay, so if there's a machine that, or an object that no one on Earth has seen before, and who are we going to ask, about this machine or object? Who would be able to tell us the mechanism of it? Well, it's clear that he's setting up some type of cosmological type of analogy here. I think that's what he's trying to go for. But to answer the question directly as if it were posed, the person that we turn to ask about the machinery or the object and its mechanism and how it works and what it does would be scientists and engineers. Because if no one on Earth has seen such a machine before and we cannot trace it back to a manufacturer, because that would mean that it was from here and then we could get that information. If that information were denied to us, we'd be turning to the engineers and scientists so that they could analyze it, maybe take it apart, reverse engineer it, study it, figure out what its mechanism is, and then maybe tell us what it does. Seems the logical reply to me.
What can he reply? Suppose a machinery who no one in the world has seen, if it's brought in front of the atheist and he's asked the question, who will be the first person who will tell you the mechanism of this machinery or object? The reply the atheist will give you is the first person who will tell you the mechanism is the manufacturer. Some may say the creator, some may say the inventor, some may say the producer. Whatever they say, it will be somewhat similar. Either they say the creator, the manufacturer, the producer, the inventor. It will be somewhat similar. Just keep it at the back of your mind. Then ask him the next question. That how did our universe come into existence? So the atheist will tell us that initially there was a primary nebula. Then there was a big bang. There was a secondary separation which gave rise to galaxies, the sun, the moon, and the earth on which we live. This we call as a big bang.
No. That doesn't seem consistent with the current literature. No. The primary nebula, that is speaking more toward like solar system formation rather than, that isn't part of the Big Bang model. I'm not quite sure where he's getting that.
When did you come to know about this creation of the universe? So he will tell you, about 30, 40 years back, the scientists that discovered this. You ask him the question, but what you're talking about the Big Bang is already mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 30, which says, أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Do not the unbelievers see أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتْ رَتْقًا فَسَقْنَاهُمَا, that the heavens and the earth were joined together and we clove them asunder. What you're talking about the Big Bang is already mentioned in the Quran 1400 years ago. Who could have mentioned that? So the atheist will say, maybe it's a fluke. No problem. Don't argue with him. You continue.
You see, he's saying, don't argue with him, continue. He's setting up a script here for his devotees to follow, is what he's doing. Now, with regard to the claim of the Big Bang being accurately described in the Quran, I admit I haven't read the entire Quran. I'm not familiar with that passage that he's talking about, so I can't rightly say. However, I can say this. Not ever, not once, is Muhammad credited with coming up with the concept of the Big Bang. Ever. So, I would think it is much more likely that the passages that he was talking about, and it was difficult to understand him right there because he was saying it in Arabic and then in English, was I think that these are more nebulous passages that one can look back on with a lens of modernity and say, oh yeah, if you look at it in a certain way and hold your hand like this and maybe hold your tongue just right, you can get that passage to mean what you think it says. What would really be convincing for this would be to show that the Muslims in antiquity were properly describing the current state of the universe from a singularity via the Big Bang and cosmic inflation and all this type of stuff. If that is what the Quran was definitely saying and clearly stating, then the Muslims of antiquity would have known this. And had Dr. Naik been able to demonstrate that, I'm pretty extra special sure that he would have. That he hadn't is rather telling.
The light of the moon, is it its own light or reflected light? So the atheists will tell us that previously we thought the moon has its own light. Recently we have come to know in science, recently means 100 years back, 200 years back, we have come to know that the light of the moon is not its own light but a reflected light. The Quran mentions 1400 years ago in Surah Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 61, that blessed is he who had placed the constellation in the sky and placed therein a lamp, a sun, having its own light, and moon having reflected light or borrowed light. The Arabic word used for moonlight in the Quran is munir or nur, meaning reflected light or borrowed light. Who could have mentioned in the Quran 1400 years ago that the light of the moon is not its own light but reflected light, which we have come to know recently? The atheist may say, your Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, maybe he was an intelligent man. Don't argue with him. Continue.
Okay, so here the good doctor is claiming that the Quran accurately says that moonlight is reflected light, and he claims that this was unknown to science until a few hundred years ago, that the knowledge is, that Western knowledge of the nature of the light of the moon was preceded by the Quran. And he's the whole topic of this is proof God exists with full scientific evidence. So what they're trying to say is, if the claims in the Quran are true, that are scientific claims, then God clearly exists, etc., etc., etc. What he's talking about is moonlight definitely being empirically proven to be reflected in 1500, and that was like Da Vinci time. But that isn't where the idea started. The idea was already circulating and had been circulating since antiquity. We're going to be talking right now about Empedocles of Arcagas. He was a Greek physician, philosopher, and poet. He was the dude that came up with the 4 classic elements of earth, air, fire, and water. He used love to combine them, strife to separate them, and through this process, with those 4 elements, he imagined the entire world, all the critters and beings in it, to be created. He also wrote about the moon as reflecting light from the sun in a work called On Nature, which was 300 or 400 BCE. So if we were to take Dr. Naik's argument, where if a individual making a guess or even a hypothesis, that science later pans out, that it turns out to be true, as evidence of that person's God existing, we can all go home because it's clearly Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom. I don't think he's going to concede that point, but there it is right there. So just to be extra special clear, if science proves a claim, it's proving that claim and that claim only. It does not vindicate any other idea that the person that came up with that claim has. Okay? Okay. Moving on.
The world that we live on, what's the shape of this earth on which we live? The atheist will tell you it is spherical. When did we come to know?
Okay.
So he will tell us, it was 1597 when Sir Francis Drake, when he sailed around the earth, that he proved that the earth was spherical. But the Quran says 1400 years ago, in Surah Naziyat, chapter
1400 years ago.
verse number 30, Wal arda ba'da zalika dahaha. And thereafter, we have made the earth egg-shaped. The Arabic word dahaha, one of its meaning is the earth is an expanse. The other meaning is derived from the Arabic word duya, which means an egg. And it doesn't refer to a normal egg. It refers to the egg of an ostrich. And we know the world is not completely round like a ball, but it is geospherical in shape. It is starting from the pole. And if you analyze the shape of the egg of an ostrich, that too is geospherical in shape. Who could have mentioned 1400 years ago that the shape of the earth is geospherical? Again, the atheist may say, your prophet, maybe he's super intelligent. Don't argue with him. You can continue.
No, Dr. Naik, no. This whole little bit you just said here, there's a lot of errors here. So we're going to take a little bit to correct you. Okay? First off, the first person to circumnavigate the Earth was Ferdinand Magellan. The voyage was completed in 1522. It was set on in 1519, if memory serves. He died en route in 1521. Sir Francis Drake was not born until 1540, about 20 years after it had already been empirically proven that the world was round. Francis Drake, furthermore, made no voyage in 1597, as he died in 1596. So, another point of error is when we knew the world was round. Because Ferdinand Magellan's voyage was the last bit of empirical proof that was required. But we knew this before that. We knew this because Pythagoras postulated a globe in the 6th or 5th century BCE. Eratosthenes, he empirically calculated that the Earth was a globe, and furthermore, fairly accurately calculated its circumference by measuring shadows at two different points at a known distance, and then figuring out the distance of the difference in the length of the shadows, meaning that they were on an arc, figured out the arc to the center of the Earth. Right here, this tells you what the arc is. That tells you how many degrees it is. That tells you what the complete circumference must be. And he was accurate, fairly accurate for the time. So we have known that the Earth was a globe in 240 BCE, which is, 240, 800, 1,000 years before the Quran was invented by Muhammad. So, this was already scholarship. This was already able to be proven. Now, was it from some, Greek guy in 240 BCE? Yes, it was, because that Greek guy that did those calculations was the head librarian of the Library of Alexandria, which the Arab world had access to through trading routes, because that's where everybody went. And anybody that wanted to learn anything in the ancient world went to the Library of Alexandria. Eratosthenes' position in the library, being head librarian, would have permitted his work to have definite access to those that wished to have it. Are we clear? And one more thing, while we're on this topic, any of you flat earthers out there, this is a new channel, and I'm just going to put it here once. I'm not dealing with you. I am not dealing with you. Take your happy ass over to Godless Engineer, and he can decimate you, or take your functional working model that you can prove and bring it onto the Non-Sequitur Show. Kyle on Non-Sec said that he would shut Non-Sec down. Remove every video if you could prove your flat earth model. I'm not the guy to mess with that. I don't care. I am not going to waste any time with you. I hope this is clear. We're done. You don't even get to start. Moving on.
When I was in school, I had learned that the sun was stationary. It revolved but did not rotate about its own axis. So the atheists will say, is that mentioned in the Quran? I say, no, that is what I learned in school. When I passed my school in 1982, approximately 12 years back, I had learned the sun was stationary, did not rotate about its own axis. But the Quran says in Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 33, Huwa allazi khalaqa al-layl wan-nahara. It is Allah who has created the night and the day. Wa-shamsa wal-qamar, the sun and the moon. Kullun fi falaki yasbahun, each one traveling in orbit with its own motion.
You catch that?
So the Quran says that besides the sun revolving, it even rotates about its own axis.
No! No, it doesn't! That is not what it says at all. It says it moves with its own motion. What they're talking about there sounds to me more like a flat earth. And I told you, I'm not messing with you guys. Go over see Godless Engineer or Kyle at Non-Sec. I'm not messing with you. It sounds like he's talking about motion over a flat earth. That says nothing about rotation about its own axis. That passage does not say what you're claiming it's saying.
Who could have mentioned this in the Quran 1400 years ago? And the atheist will be saying,
anybody, because they made it up.
There'll be a long pause. Don't wait for the reply. You can keep on continuing.
If there's a long pause from an atheist after hearing something like that, it's because they're either flabbergasted or far too polite to call you out on your abject nonsense.
Today, science tells us that the universe is expanding, which is mentioned in the Quran 1400 years ago in Surah Dhariyat, chapter number 51, verse number 47. The Quran speaks about the water cycle which we learnt in school. It was Sir Bernard Palissy in 1580 who first described the water cycle, how does the water evaporate from the ocean, forms into clouds, moves into the interior, falls down as rain. This water cycle is spoken about in great detail in the Quran in several verses. In Surah Az-Zumur, chapter 39, verse 21. In Surah Rum, chapter number 30, verse 24. In Surah Hijr, chapter 15, verse 22. In Surah Mu'minun, chapter number 23, verse number 18. In Surah Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 43. In Surah Rum, chapter number 30, verse 48. In Surah Araf, chapter number 7, verse number 17. In Surah Furqan, chapter number 25, verse 48 to 49. In Surah Fatir, chapter number 35, verse number 9. In Surah Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 34. In Surah Mulk, chapter number 67, verse number 30. In Surah Tariq, chapter number 86, verse number 11. There are hundreds of verses in the Quran which only speak about the water cycle, which science has discovered recently. We can keep on talking that today we have come to know that the plants have got sexes which we did not know earlier. Quran says in Surah Taha, chapter number 20, verse number 53, that the plants have got sexes, male and female. Today we have come to know that there are two types of water, sweet and salty. And there is a barrier between them, which is mentioned in the Quran in Surah Furqan, chapter 25, verse 53, and Surah Rahman, chapter 55, verse 17 and 18. Marajal Bahraini al-Taqiyan, Bainahuma barzakhun la yabghiyan. It is Allah who has let free two bodies of flowing water. Though they meet, they do not mix. There is a barrier between them.
Okay. So, all right, so you caught that, right? That was theater. He was clearly playing to his audience, and his audience loved it. They absolutely loved it. I mean, if you listened, if you were able to hear, I mean, I could hear it on my speakers here, you hear the cries of Allahu Akbar in the background, all right, from the audience. They are loving this. They are loving that kind of answer. So they're going to hate this one. Note the verses he says. Even those unfamiliar with the Quran are going to be able to say that, hey, just from the numbers there, these are at different places. These are different chapters, different verses. There's nothing consecutive where the water cycle is clearly explained by Muhammad, saying, okay, well, we have condensation and evaporation, and then precipitation, and then this is how the groundwater moves through, and eventually comes at the ocean, and then there's, then goes again. So it's nothing like that. These are disjointed little passages here and there all over the book. Now, I'm not going to say that the good doctor is cherry-picking verses, but just from the numbers that he gave, that is certainly consistent with cherry-picking that we've seen Christian apologists often do. And again, we come back to the old challenge, just from the claims of the Big Bang. I would like to see Dr. Naik produce evidence that the Muslims in antiquity understood the water cycle to be as he is describing it now from their knowledge of the Quran. Because certainly the Muslims of antiquity did not study it any less. They had entire schools dedicated to its study. So if it clearly said what he is claiming that it said, and we're not just looking back on the passage with the lens of modernity, we would be able to show that the Muslims already understood this and had implemented ways to adapt to that, or to make that work to their advantage. So, back to it, I guess.
Today science tells us that it is the mountains which prevent the earth from shaking, which is mentioned in the Quran 1400 years ago in Surah Naba, chapter number 78, verse number 6 and 7.
Dude! What are you actually talking about? The mountains keep the earth from shaking? No, they freaking don't! Ah, God, no! No, they don't! Dr. Naik, they do not! Mountains are a reliable indicator of where the earth might shake. One would think that the doctor might know this, as he is a native of India, which is crashing into the Eurasian plate, pushing up the Himalayas, and it's one of the most seismically active places in the world. They have monstrous earthquakes over there. There was just one a couple of years ago that killed like 10,000 people. Mountains hold the earth in place. No, sir. No, they do not. And that isn't even to speak about volcanoes, which are another type of mountain. I mean, have you ever heard of Hawaii, Dr. Naik? Dr. Naik, Hawaii is nothing but mountains. The entire freaking state's landmass is made from volcanic islands, with mountains rising up from them, up from the seafloor. The tallest mountain in the world, once you adjust for the water, right? So Hawaii has like thousands of earthquakes every year. Like literally has thousands of earthquakes every year because of its mountains. The mountains hold the earth in place. That's just nonsense. Your Quran is wrong. Your Quran is wrong. Just admit it. It's wrong. You're done. No. You don't get to claim that. Absolutely not. No.
Chapter 21, verse number 30, Quran mentions this 1400 years ago. The Quran speaks about zoology, about the lifestyle of the spider in Surah Ankabut, chapter 29, verse 41. About the ant in Surah Namal, chapter 27, verse 17 to 18. About the bee in Surah Nahl, chapter number 16, verse 66, 68, 69. The Quran speaks
Gish,
about embryology in Surah Alaq, chapter 96, verse number 1 and 2. We have created the human being from alaqa, a leech-like substance, which we have come to recently. The Quran speaks about embryological stages in Surah Mu'minun, chapter 23, verse number 12 to 14. You can go on talking about the scientific points. There are more than 1,000 verses in the Quran which speak about science. After every scientific fact, you ask the question, who could have mentioned that in the Quran? The only reply the atheist can give you is the creator, the cherisher, the manufacturer, the inventor, the producer, this creator, this manufacturer, this producer, this inventor, we Muslims call him as Allah.
Okay. In that last bit, I could have stopped him at just about every pause, every little pause there, and pointed out why and how he was wrong, or that it didn't make the claim that he is claiming that it does. But it all really doesn't matter. So, Dr. Naik, no. We need not only say the Creator could have known the so-called knowledge that your Quran possesses. And we don't need to say only the manufacturer for the machine analogy you presented at the beginning of your talk. Your example of the sun rotating about its own axis is not supported by the quote that you gave. The bit about the mountains keeping the earth from shaking, I mean, that's just, your Quran is demonstrably wrong on that subject. The case of the shape of the earth and the moon being reflected light, these were already ideas that were published and circulating for hundreds, if not thousands of years before your Quran was ever written. So when it comes to the Big Bang and the water cycle, if you want to demonstrate that the Quran says what you claim that it does now, then show us the Muslims in antiquity that knew this, and show us their works where they were the ones that understood this from the Quran. I don't think you have done that because I don't think you're able. But I would be very interested to see some supporting evidence of this. So it just comes down to cherry picking and looking back on these passages to claim what you want them to through the lens of modernity. And that is brought to you by scientists and engineers. The very people to whom we will turn to figure out the mysteries of your analogous machine over there, and to whom we will continue to turn to analyze and understand the mechanisms of the universe. Our understanding is not going to be in the deluge of divine revelation by past, present, or future gods. It will be in increments, each generation of knowledge standing upon the people who came before it and their discoveries. And with each small part that we learn, we will praise the names of the men and women who added their contribution to our collective understanding. So it's not going to be glory to God or praise be to Allah or even hail Athena. No. More akin to glory to Al-Farghani, praise be to Hubble, hail Sagan. Well, that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. I know this was a little bit of a longer video, and I said a lot of things down in there. I do have references down below, including links to Godless Engineer and the Non-Sequitur Show. Thanks to both GE and Kyle for letting us link to them here. And, as always, we'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.